Okay, welcome back. Good afternoon. This is the post-lunch session for the two-day workshop on caste and inequality, social, political and economic reflections. We have the pleasure to have Professor Amitabh Kundu, retired professor from JNU, and he's a member of various committees, including the most powerful Sachar committee evaluation that's going on currently. Professor Kundu agreed to my rash request at the very first instance. I sent him an email, and I'm really grateful to welcome back Professor Kundu here. He has spoken here before also. So this session is going to be chaired by Dr. Sushil Haldar, Department of Economics, Jadavpur University. There are a couple of papers, including the first special lecture by Professor Kundu, and I would request Dr. Haldar to come over and chair the session.
Welcome to all of you at the post-lunch session, the second day of this fourth day of this seminar. In this session, we have the two speakers, but right now the other speaker did not yet come, Anil Vimali. Therefore, I would like to request Professor Amitabh Kundu to deliver his lecture about 1 hour and 10 or 15 minutes for discussion. I think it solely depends on you. You can take more than 1 hour. Therefore, I would request Professor Kundu to start his speech.
Professor Haldar, colleagues and friends, it's a privilege for me to come here. I'm so happy that Shraddha insisted that when I had some difficulties, logistic problems in Delhi, and I'm leaving in 2 days to take up my job. I have a responsibility, teaching responsibility begins from 1st of April in Germany. But I'm really happy that I came here because I thought this would give me an opportunity also of presenting some of the results of this interim report, post-Sachar evaluation committee, which had a very, very unfortunate birth. It was to be born formally on 5th of this month. We had called the press, we could have formally released it. Because I think that this is making an important step. There can be deficiencies in the analysis, one can improve all that. That's not the issue. The issue is in the politically charged atmosphere today in the country, with the election being there, caste equations with the religious communities are being worked out. Every day you hear this candidate made such and such religious leader, wore such and such dress, made this politically sensitive and religious sentiment supporting statements. I think that debate needs to be informed by hardcore socio-economic analysis, the kind that Professor Bakshi was doing in the last session. Unless you bring in this actual deprivation and bring out the discrimination factor and put it before the political parties and the political leaders. Look, here are the issues. Here are the recommendations which have been made. What is your position? Do you think you accept it? Otherwise, whether you wear this cap or that cap, that doesn't give any idea of what would be your policy like. We have made, after our whole attempt was aborted, I got a call late at night that this cannot be released. committee members said that we are not part of the government, we could still release this. But then I'm not very sure, I didn't want to get into confrontation with the government because it is, and I told the minister that we did the work for the Ministry of Minority Affairs. We did the work for Minority Affairs. We did not do the work for the ministry. On the next day, just before the election courts became operational, there was a huge advertisement from the ministry saying that Ministry of Minority Affairs have done so much and how Muslims have benefited and other minorities have benefited. Our 3 chapters certainly in a way question some of the things. It is not really saying that UPA government didn't do anything, Muslims were condemned. That's not that kind of position. Media is speaking, those 3 chapters are projecting, they got it from some source, and projecting UPA government can be condemned, and the other parties may like to use this evaluation to embarrass the government, which again is not my motive. But the parties which are picking up the first 2 chapters to embarrass the government, the moment they look at the recommendations, they would back out. They said, no, we don't want this kind of a recommendation to come up. You can't say, okay, we take the criticism, all right, but we don't take the recommendation. So, in a way, they are also in a dilemma. So, what I have done, instead of releasing it formally, I have shared my vision with and the perspective. And I have told all my members that you can discuss with the media and tell them what is the perspective within which we have functioned, what is the broad directions of recommendation. Exact recommendations will work out in the next 2 months. I should come back from Germany in May, and our strategy is to present it to the government, whichever comes in May end. Hopefully the government will accept it. If they accept it, we will be very happy that the government has accepted it, and then they might take some of the recommendations, may not implement depending on the nature of the government which comes up. I mean, I always said that I did not work for the UPA government, I did not work for this Congress party. This is a vision of inclusive India which we have tried to do. And any party which wants to take up these causes, these recommendations, our whole committee will be supported. But if they reject it, I think they will find it difficult also to reject it, because then the media will pick it up and say, why are you rejecting it? Give reasons. And we have analyzed the data quite dispassionately, objectively, taking latest information, 68th round, looking at the employment, consumption expenditure, access to health, access to education, and reviewed the programs taking 5 states. And our findings to some extent are in conflict with the findings which were popularized by Arvind Panagadia. His study showed that in the last 6 years, Muslims benefited much more than the average in many areas. Our analysis, I just present the results so that you can compare and contrast with our results with their results. But let me not really come here for publicity and use this platform for just making some propaganda about the findings here. Let me talk about the vision of inclusive India and tell you the broad spectrum of inequality which has emerged over the past few years of time. Look at this graph. You see, the blue line shows the Millennium Development Target. Maybe I can go there. You see, poverty was to be reduced to half. This is $1 a day. This was 1990. Now it's $1.25 a day. So, by old, not Tendulkar's formula, by the old Lakarwala committees, it was about 30%. Around that, it was to come down to 15%. We have to half it by 2015. That's the objective, you see, the blue line. But actually our achievement, if you look at the statistics, again use Lakarwala committee definition, or if you take Tendulkar committee's report also, you will find a similar trend. The figures will be different. we have overachieved. By 2010, we have halved our poverty the way Planning Commission measures it. How do I move it forward?
I'll sit there.
Or is there no other way? I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine, no problem.
Look at some of the social indicators. This is under 5 mortality rate. You can similarly plot. I had about 7 or 8 such graphs. You find that the objective was to bring it down to 1/3. From 90 it was to come to 30. That was the blue line, which is the targeted thing. Our performance is very, very unsatisfactory. You see, the red line is showing that we are nowhere near the target. I just deleted the other slides. But basically the point is, in parameters reflecting economy, economic deprivation, poverty, India is not doing that badly. Even people like Jeffrey Sachs have said India is going to achieve the objective of poverty reduction. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation brought out a report before 4 years. Again, they showed the same thing. But the moment you look at multidimensional poverty, including the social deprivations, health, education, you find our performance is much less. You go to the next one. I just constructed this for India also. This is showing, the dark blue ones are showing multidimensional poverty. This is World Bank's global monitoring report, which came before 6 months, which shows that for the less developed countries, the multidimensional poverty is much higher than the consumption expenditure-based poverty or income-based poverty. We have exactly the similar thing, and the deprivation is 30% more, by multidimensional poverty compared to the pure consumption expenditure-based poverty. Now, I want to tell you that it's not just the average level of deprivation, average level of poverty. There's inequality. Although poverty is coming down, there are pockets, there are social groups, there are religious groups where you find that poverty reduction is much less than what has been anticipated or what has happened at the macro level. So one would have to look at the inequality in achieving the targets. Since, Center for Studies in Social Sciences in Calcutta, is one of the institutes which has put India in the global map. I don't want to name the persons who I hear even in Europe. I don't want to name them because some of them are present here. I don't want to embarrass them. I thought that I will start with a little bit of global perspective. Can we do this? You are aware that UNDP measures development, human development, by 3 dimensions. Income, PPP, purchasing power parity. Second is health, again taking infant mortality rate and life expectancy combined. And third is education. Stay at the school. They have modified the indicators somewhat over time. From 1990, these 3 dimensions are being annually reported. From 2010 onwards, they are making adjustment in those indices by inequality. That means if there are 2 countries, A and B, have the same level of educational index, but A has a higher inequality, its score will come down. You deflate by that inequality factor. They are bringing it out regularly. So what I did, I took the inequality for the developed countries, the middle level countries, and then the least developed countries. 94 developed countries, this is the map which shows the inequality. The red plots show the income inequality within the countries. These are 94 countries for which data are, for some countries the data are not available, you can see that. But for 94 countries, we have plotted the income inequality within the country, educational inequality, and health inequality. There is no prize for guessing where the inequality is higher. Income inequality in these 94 countries is much higher. You see that red lines which are much above. The blue ones are showing the inequality in education, and the green ones are showing the inequality in health, which really means that many of the developed countries in Europe, although they have high inequality, the access to education is not as unequal as the income inequality. You know, depending on where you live. I mean, since I am in Germany for quite some time now, I know even the villagers are able to have access to some of the very good schools and colleges. This is for 2011. We can look at the data for 2013. Next one. This is again the similar picture. I really don't want to spend much time. If you have any questions, you can get back to me. So this is for the developed countries. Now we go to the middle level countries. You find that the income inequalities are still high, but educational inequalities are not that low. The blue ones. These are educational inequality within the countries. And health inequalities have also risen a bit. This is 2011, I did it for 2013, that's the latest data available. And again you find that the educational inequalities have gone up for the middle level countries. Now come to the least developed countries, where India figures prominently. You find income inequalities, especially at the higher end, is less compared to health inequality. The green ones are showing health inequality. The blue ones are showing educational inequality. So what we find that as you move from the developed set of countries to the middle level, the lower level countries, our problem here is much more access to education. My children don't go to the same school as the children of my domestic help. I don't go to the same hospital as the poor slum dwellers. And that is really determining life expectancy. In the lowest 20% population, life expectancy still is 58 years, whereas at the highest level, highest until it is 81 years. So you see this high gap that we have in life expectancy is basically because of your educational inequality and health inequality. This we have for 2013 also. Then we go to the next. This is for India. Different states. This is not prepared by me. This is for Surya Narayana. The earlier graphs that you saw are from my paper, which UNDP has published. This is a paper by Surya Narayana, which again is published by UNDP. He shows income inequalities are very, very low, the red ones. It is the educational inequality which is much more significant than health inequalities. But I have a feeling that his income inequalities are grossly underestimated, basically because he assumed within the state there is not much of an inequality. That's a methodological problem. But nonetheless, the point is very clear that in India, it's the educational inequality and health inequality which should be our concern. We can go to the next. This is the table which gives the data for the developed countries. Average income inequality is 19.99%, which is quite high. Developed countries have much less inequality in life expectancy and education. Medium level countries, 31% for income. This is 21 education and 16 life expectancy. Least developed countries, you find health inequality, which is by and large life expectancy inequality is 32%, education is 35%, and income is 26%. India, same, income inequality is very, very low. Again, as I said, this is Surya Narayana's estimate, but education and life expectancy inequalities are very high. So, our problem is not that we are underperforming in the social areas of concern in terms of human development, but we are not able to reach the benefits equally to all socially, economically deprived persons. And when I say socially, I mean scheduled caste, scheduled tribe population and the religious minorities. Let's look at the dimensions of inequality. This is just a story that I already told you. This gives us the regional inequality. Although I was teaching in a Center for the Study of Regional Development for years, if you look at the regional inequality measured in terms of weighted coefficient of variation or weighted Gini coefficient or unweighted Gini coefficient. Weighted means gives each state weight according to the population, and unweighted means you take all states as equal. That's why you have 4, 2 for Gini coefficient, 2 for coefficient of variation. You find that there is an increase over time. This is slightly dated. I mean, I didn't put in the updated thing. So up to 2009-10, we have been able to do. The curve rises but not very much. It almost gets stabilized. So regional inequality has been addressed. In every state, 2 or 3 big cities have come up, middle class have come up, and the regional income inequality which existed, which is still high, I'm not saying it has disappeared, but it is not increasing anymore. The inequality has stabilized. But look at the rural-urban inequality we have, the next graph. This is per capita, this is income. I couldn't get data, reliable data for 2019. I should have brought that in, but this is up to 2004-5. 70-71, I have indexed it to be equal. They are not actually equal. In 70-71, urban per capita income is 56% higher in real terms. Make rural and urban price adjustments, and you find by making similar price adjustments, you find that urban-rural income inequality in per capita income has gone up significantly. The next one shows the per capita consumption. Expenditure gap, again I have made them equal, 72, 73. These are NSS rounds. The dotted ones are thin round, thin sample, and the thick ones, the deep ones are reflecting the large sample based, and you do find rural-urban inequality has gone up. And I think this is an important point. Professor Bakshi was mentioning that he went to the rural areas and he did not find any scheduled caste teacher there. In fact, there's a study by Krishna in Duke University. He has shown, what he did, he took about 20 colleges which produce young men and women for the global sectors. Engineers, managers, those, took the IITs and IIMs. 20 includes public sector, which has reservation, and the private sector, prestigious gateway institutions, and surveyed something like 500 students. And he found that if you are a scheduled caste person but coming from an urban area, you have the same proportion as your population share. But if you are a scheduled caste population and have your entire school education up to 12th class in a village, you have a zero chance of getting into these institutions. Not only for the scheduled caste, for the Muslims, the same. Urban Muslims are in a position to manage somehow and get their proportional share in these institutions. Basically, why the scheduled caste population from urban areas are able to get their proportionate share? Basically because rural Muslims, rural scheduled castes are not there. So their quota also comes to the urban scheduled caste population. But the rural scheduled caste population, if you had your entire education in the rural areas and you belong to SC community, ST community, or Muslim community, your chances of getting into this gateway institution is absolutely zero, despite the fact that there are some public sector institutions which were included. And if you are not scheduled caste, scheduled tribe population, if you are an upper caste Hindu population and you have your education in the rural area up to 12th class, your chances are almost similar. It's not very much different. It's slightly higher, but nonetheless, it's the rural-urban divide in terms of, I'm talking about, top level educational institutions, the chances of getting there. This is, as I said, Krishna's study, and I really appreciated that when it was being published in Hague Journal. So that, I think, is a significant divide that we have to address. That's why in my paper for UNDP, I have looked at the rural-urban inequality in more detail. You see, this is the graph. The green one shows that rural-urban gap in poverty is declining. The green one, and the blue one shows it's East Asia and Pacific, where the decline is much sharper. But overall, in the world, rural-urban inequality is declining. But if you take South Asia, you find the gaps have remained constant. As far as India is concerned, as I said, per capita income and per capita expenditure gaps have gone up. I just want to make a small qualification, those who work with the NSS data. If you take 2011-12, you find that gap has slightly narrowed down because the rural consumption expenditure in 2011-12 increased slightly faster than the urban consumption expenditure in 2011-12. Why? Because 2009-10 was a bad year. That is 66th round. 66th round was a very bad year. Obviously, when you had a 68th round, you have a greater improvement in the rural consumption expenditure, but the general trend is that the rural-urban consumption expenditure gaps have gone up. I just wanted to show you some global scenario. You see urban-rural gap in access to sanitation by region. Which region shows the highest gap? It is South Asia, which has, basically it's India. South Asian population, 73% is India's population. So you have the yellow bar is showing rural-urban gap in access to sanitation. This is the gap, the the difference between percentage of people having access to sanitation in the urban areas minus the percentage of people having in rural areas. That gap is shown by the yellow bar, which is the highest in 1990. In 2010, the blue one is showing that there is some decline in the rural-urban gap, but it continues to be the highest. And Indian gap is about 13-14% higher than the average gap in South Asian countries. Go to the next one. This is rural-urban difference in infant mortality rate. I just looked at all the countries and then I subsequently look at the state level data also. You find that there is the rural-urban differential in infant mortality rate is very high, and it doesn't show, surprisingly, strong correlation with income, which means that if your income goes up, it does not necessarily mean that your rural-urban gaps will go down. Go to the next one. You know, it becomes almost asymptotic. This is x-axis as percentage of urban population. If urbanization goes up, the general neoclassical growth models tell you that automatically rural-urban gaps will go down, there will be dissemination of growth impulses and that will cover the whole region. You do find that neither income nor urbanization automatically reduces rural-urban inequality. There has to be different kind of a strategy of economic development, which is unfortunately not represented in the report coming from high-powered expert committee, which was headed by Dr. Ishar Ahluwalia. She talked about creating big cities only from 52 big cities, million plus cities. She talks about 87 big cities to be created by 2030. That certainly, that kind of urbanization, industrialization model does not lead to decrease in the rural-urban inequality. Now this is an interesting graph. I want to conclude the discussion on rural-urban inequality with this. See, it shows percentage of people living in slums. You know, one of the Millennium Development Goal was to reduce or improve the condition of the slum dwellers by 100 million and reduce the slum population. And UN has complimented India that you have been very, very successful in reducing the slum population. Percentage of slum population, 2011 census report, something like 17%, it was 23% in 2001. And look at South Asia. If I had a torch, I could have shown you. South Asia has the highest reduction. Southern Asia, can you see that? You see the maximum reduction has taken place in slum population in South Asia, and a very high reduction in slum population has taken place in India. If any one of you is working on the slum data, you would know that the Pranav Sen committee which was set up, which had projected that 65 million was the slum dwelling population in 2001. It would become 9